Hello, welcome back to 3D Drawing for your Model Railway. In today's lesson, I think it's part 6, we're going to be looking at the couplings underneath and how I'm going to try to do those. So initially we're going to draw the same design of the center pin on the plate wagon, and then I'm going to show you how to transfer across the whole of the coupling arm here so we can transfer it into the other project. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be looking at is, let's remember what the dimensions are. So if we inspect this, so it's 2mm radius with a 1mm radius on the inside here. So if we jump into the plate here, we can draw a sketch on the bottom surface. Okay, so if we create just a circle, we're going to find the midpoint of the wagon, drag it out, and it was 2 centimetre, 2mm, and then 2 on the inside there. Okay, let's define distance from the edge. So 3.5 at the moment. Define distance from the side there. Okay, we can extrude this up now. So we just select that section. Let's actually have a quick look at how high the extrusion needs to be. So inspect from top surface to bottom surface, 2.5. Sorry, I'll show that. I'll slow that down a bit. So inspect from the top surface there to the bottom surface. It gives you a distance here of 2.5mm on the side. So we've got this part here, we can extrude it. .5mm. Okay, and we can tell that to join. Click on OK. We're going to mirror this across that center plane. So we can do mirror feature, select the feature, and then the mirror plane being plane 1, which is that center plane we've got. Then put that coupling on both ends. Okay. So that, as I said, the next thing I wanted to do was transfer over the coupling arm here. Now, to do this, you're going to want to change this into a component. So if we come down to the body, select the coupling arm, right click, and then create component from bodies. Okay. That will then turn this into a component all by itself. And then if we select the coupling arm here, the radio check, right click, copy, we can then bring it into the plate wagon. Now, bearing in mind we're still working on the top section here, we can right click and then paste new, and that will then import that as a component. Okay, so as you can see, it's placed it all the way over here, so we're going to need to move this around. So if we go side on to start with, okay, let's just drag a height so it looks about right. So height wise that looks okay there. I'll rotate to the base, okay, and that needs to come across slightly. That's probably a little bit too far. So we do minus 0.9. That looks relatively centered. No, we don't have to have it perfect, it's just to bring it as part of this so that you can then create that as you print it. You can just print that separate body. Just notice we've got an extra body here floating, so I'm just going to combine that in. That's that one. So if we edit that feature and tell it to join, click on OK, and then it will jump back to the end. That's now combined in there. Okay, so if we look at the position of the shank here, that looks okay. You can maybe want to shorten that slightly. So if you want to do that, you can come in here, go into the bodies. Okay, I'm going to make sure the radio button is selected on there. We're then going to split this body. So if we capture the position there of that component, that's fine. We're going to body to split, it's already selected. We're going to select the splitting tool as this back surface of the coupling pocket. Click on OK. and that'll then split it into two. We're going to hide this coupling arm there, and then we're going to extrude this back into the wagon slightly. So you're just shortening this up. Maybe 0.75 will be fine. Minus 0.75. Okay. And then bring that back in. We can move that. Select that one. And then move copy. We're going to drag that back in by 0.75. Okay. And now what you've got is this is closer to the buffers. It's just shortening the spacing between the wagons there. You can combine those two. So you're going to combine the bottom one with the top one. Click on OK, and that all becomes one coupling arm again. Okay, so we've now got that coupling arm sorted. If you wanted to import the pin, you do the same process. So you just come back into this one, and we'll find the coupling pin, and then create component from body, and then select the radio button there, right click, and copy, and then back into this one, check the radio button at the top, right click, paste new, and where's our pin? It's over here. Okay, so let's try and move that roughly in place. I'm going to actually have this lower so you can see that it's floating around rather than joining it all the way up. Okay. A little bit like an exploded diagram type thing. So we've now got a coupling arm and a coupling pin transferred across. So again, that's a nice, quite simple way of doing that and importing those into this wagon. Okay, so now we've copied that coupling in. The next thing we're going to need is the cable drum. So we did this on a previous project earlier in the tutorials. So it's in cable drums here. I'm going to drag that in. Okay, so here we are, we've got the cable drum. One thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add a little bracket on the side here. So if we just roll this back, somebody mentioned in the comments that on the outside of these they've actually got like a little bracket that helps to protect them. So I'm going to draw on that surface there. We use a center point rectangle, go to the center point, and we'll draw a square. What shall we go with? 2 centimeters squared. How does that look with the photos? If you look at the photos, you can see that, yeah, it's clearly on there. 2 centimeters probably is okay. And if we select this profile, I'm going to extrude this 2 ways. I'm going to extrude it inwards, so it joins on the bottom of the grooves here. I'm just going to come out, yeah, maybe 0.15, I think, and I'm going to tell that to join. Okay, and then that will mirror across, so that we've now got that on both sides. Okay, so now we've got that all done. We're going to again do the same thing. We'll turn that body into a component, and then we're going to copy that body, that component, and we're going to paste new into the wagon. Now I'm going to move this off to the side because I'm going to print this again as a completely separate part. Now the reason I'm printing it as a separate part rather than as one whole thing connected to the wagon is underneath here, where you've got all these like little starting bits for each of the coil. You've got little low parts here, so when you print all this, you've got to support each one of these individually. Now, if you were to do that while it's connected to the wagon, obviously you're going to end up with all the supports touching the wagon, and then you're going to end up with it looking a bit horrible, really. Okay, so if we look at this photo of the frame, you can see how the centre spindle actually sits out from the side of the cable drum. Now, I could do that for what we're doing, but my concern then would be whether this would actually support itself, whether it would collapse, how strong it would be, because that's going to be really, really small. It'd end up being quite brittle. So I'm actually tempted to just join these up to the side of the cable drum here, just for that extra support. It's going to be a little bit stronger, and then it's more likely to survive when it's on the wagon rather than getting knocked off accidentally. And the last thing you'd want to do is produce all this model, paint it all up, get all the transfers, have it running, and accidentally catch one of these, snap it off, and it just looks awful then. So yeah, I'm going to draw this all connected up. If we come into Fusion, we're just going to draw on the side of this, as I said. So I'm going to create a sketch off of. Okay, we'll start on the square. We'll capture that position there. That's fine. Okay, so if we look at the shape, we've got like a centre beam that comes down and across, and then two uprights that come out from there. So we're going to use a rectangle tool, and this is going to start. We're going to start it to the side of that centre point. I'm going to come all the way down. Not worrying about the width for the moment. Height-wise, it's going to be just below the. If you look at the picture here, there's not a lot of gap between the bottom of the cable drum and the floor. So I'm just going to drag this up ever so slightly. Probably about there. Okay, let's define some of these measurements. So from the side there to the origin point, I'm going to do as 0.3. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So it's going to be 0.6 wide. Okay, I'm going to select those two profiles and extrude that. Two sides actually. I'm going to extrude the inside to that edge, and I'm going to bring that out. Okay, I'm going to go, so it's going to be 1 millimeter there. Let's get that to join. Okay. Good. Right. So the top, as you can see, has got a rounded spindle on the end here. So again, we're going to create a sketch on that surface. And I'm going to use a circle. And we'll create the circle off of that midpoint there. Yeah, slightly bigger, 0.7. And select both of those profiles. Don't want to delete what I don't know what it's doing there. Escape. Let's try again. So that. Selecting, holding down the left mouse button to get that profile. Right click, and then we're going to extrude that forwards ever so slightly beyond the end of the right there. Okay, so you can see what we're getting here. Okay, so let's now have the part on the bottom. Okay, let's create an offset plane. From that face, it's going to go that direction, so minus 0.3. So it's now going to be in the middle of the part here. We're going to draw on that plane. We're going to project that profile so we can then snap to it. We're going to use a rectangle, go from bottom corner, and it's going to be 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter. Okay, so it's slightly under 1 millimeter, so let's change that. That needs to be 1. Let's delete that. Okay, delete that. Let's constrain that corner to that corner. That'll do the width there. Okay, so now we've got that. Select that profile, hold down the left mouse button to get it, right click, and then extrude. And then we're going to do symmetrical. Okay, so how far out does it go now? So if we look, it's not coming out beyond the end of the cable drums. So we're going to drag it out maybe 4 millimeters. Tell it to join and click on OK. Okay, so now we've got the uprights and the horizontal bit on the bottom. The next thing we need is to have the diagonal pieces. So we're going to create a sketch on this front face here. And it's going to create a line. Start in the corner of it. not quite. So we're going to start the line like that, and it doesn't go all the way up, so it's going to go to that there. We'll define the distance from there to there. It's 0.5, and the distance from there to the top there. Let's go as 1 millimeter. Okay, and then we'll offset that line inwards. Let's do 0.6. And then we've got that profile that we can extrude. I'm going to extrude it all the way through to the other side. There you go, snap through to the other side, click the joint. Okay. Okay, and then we should be able to mirror that feature onto that side. No, that's not going to work. Oh, wait a minute. We're going to mirror it on. Where did we put that construction line? That one there. It's got in the top surface. We're going to mirror it on that center construction line that we created there. Okay, so we've now got that selected. We're now going to create a midplane between those two outer flat surfaces. We need this to be separate. We might be able to mirror features and then select all of these. Like that. Mirror plane being the center one. Okay. And yeah, there we go. It's moved that across nicely for us. So now we've got our cable drum. We can now move it where we want it to be. Let's minimize that part. Okay, so if we move the cable drum into position, so there. Okay, let's look at rotations. Now I'm only putting these into a rough position because, as I say, we're going to print them separately, and then obviously they need to be glued into position afterwards. Further down there. 9 millimeter there. Okay, and then rotation wise, I'm just going to put 30 degrees on it. Okay, and there's our cable drum. Now obviously you would want 2 of them, so you can just come to your bodies, move copy, tell it to create a copy. I don't know why it's put it all over there, but okay. That's actually a pain that it's done that. Cancel that. I'm just going to leave it like that because I know that I'm going to just print 2 of them. And for the sake of me now faffing around to try and sort that out and put that on the top, it's just not worth it. Okay, so you've now got your cable drum, you've got your wagon, and you've got your coupling. So I'm thinking it's starting to look almost done now. I'm just going to go around checking for any details that maybe miss or we could add on, and then see what we can go from there. Okay, just looking at some of the details here, we've got intermittent wagons. It doesn't matter. I'm not entirely sure whether it's all of them, some of them. Some have these, some don't. These little lights fixtures. I think there's something that was fitted that was, a bit ad hoc because they've not all got them, and those that do have them don't seem to have them in the same place between wagons. They look like they get broken quite often. They are really quite flimsy, so I don't think I'd be tempted to print these at all. If you're going to do these, I might maybe just use a piece of wire, a small bit of plastic card on the top. But one thing that is obvious because of them is they've got these like wire and plugs here across the across the buffer beam. So I'm going to draw those on. Then I'm not going to do them too detailed because they, as I say, they're going to be tiny on here. So if we look, it's just slightly above the buffer here. So create a sketch on. Capture that. That's this. Let's move this one to capture position on. So we'll create a sketch on that surface. Just going to create a small rectangle. It's going to be tiny, really. It's going to be 0.5 by 0.5 probably. And then if we extrude that forwards, maybe 0.5. Let's, do I want to do it? No, let's tell it to join. Click on OK. No, actually, let's not. Edit feature. Let's do it as a new body because I'm going to copy this over in a minute. Do that as a new body. Click on OK. And then there's 3 of them across the wagon. So the next one is a little bit further in this side of the halfway point, and then the same on the other side. So it's rectangular pattern, bodies, select that body 23, select horizontal direction, there's 3 of them. Go for something like that position. Okay, that should create 3 more. Yep. And then I'm going to turn off the body and the dummy wheels. And then they've got like a cable that goes, or pipe that goes between them. I'm going to create a sketch on the front plane here. Find the midpoint and drag in slightly. And I'm going to go for about 0.3 millimeters. I'm going to move, let's constrain that to the midpoint. No, let's do it like this, dimension it. Oops, there, and I'm going to drag that in. Just so that it's part of, actually no, not going to do that, because then we can select the profile here. That's it. And then we're going to extrude that all the way across to the other side. Tell that to join. These 3 should then become one body. And then turn these back on. Okay, so you can see how that's now coming across. We're going to move copy. Let's create a copy of that. And we're going to rotate it through 180. And drag it across the wagon. I'm going to be just touching. That's probably a little too far there. Let's go for 7. 7, 1, 7, 2, 7, 1, 7, 1, 5. So it's only just overlapping there. Rotate it this direction. And we need to drag it in. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's exact because no 2 wagons look identical. So it's just one of those things that are fitted, and then everyone sort of is haphazardly added together. So we then just combine the body. Double wheels there. Let's try that again. Turn that off. That's because I'm holding Shift rather than Control. Tell it to join. That's those now added on. They're going to be tiny, but there'll be enough that you might be able to pick them out. Okay, with tiny little brushes to paint it. Okay, so I think detail-wise, I'm pretty happy with everything else. I say I'm not going to do the lights. The rivets in this sole bar, you could do those, but they're really small ones. There's a few of them you could add in there. You're not going to see them the time I painted that, especially with the overhang and where they're positioned. So I'm pretty happy that I've got a wagon there that is going to be quite useful. And if you look at the pictures, these run in quite reasonable length brakes. They always seem to be with a brake van when I've seen the pictures, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. There's 4 on that side of the brake van. These brakes are 1, 2, 3. It's difficult to see all of them. But you're probably looking at 7, 8 wagons. There's a pair of them there with a different type of wagon there. We've got here 1, 2. That's the same 2 wagons. So there's a good variety there. You could run them just singly, or pick 4 or 5 of them, maybe even longer. So choice is yours. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. If you have, please press like and subscribe, and make sure you're notified when I update more content. Thanks for watching.